tonight's Pendle Council livestream will start in just a few minutes. You can view tonight's meeting agenda by visiting pendle.gov.uk/meetings, where the upcoming meeting notes are available to view. We will go live very soon. All of the future Pendle meeting agendas, as well as the previous meeting reports and minutes, can be viewed on the Council website at pendle.gov.uk/meetings. Tonight's meeting will start shortly.
Thank you, everyone. Can you please take seat? Good evening, everyone. Thank you for every single one of you for coming down. This is extraordinary meeting of the Council Monday, 17th March 2025, 7 p.m. Could we start with the agenda? Are there any apologies? Best, Mr. Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I give apologies for the other councillor Whip who's not feeling very well? And he was in the middle of Bradford when I spoke to him and he said, well, I'm not going to bother coming. Looking around the room, quite a lot of other people thought...
Councillor Nadeem.
Apologies from councillors Neil Butterworth and Kevin Toll.
Councillor Ashad. Thank you. Next is item number 2, declaration of interest. Members are reminded of the legal requirements concerning the declaration of interest. A member must declare a disclosable pecuniary interest which she has in any item on the agenda. A member with a disclosable pecuniary interest in any item may not participate in any discussion of the matter of the meeting and must not participate in the vote taken on the matter at the meeting. In addition, the Council's standing orders require a member with a disclosable pecuniary interest to leave the room where the meeting is held while any discussion or voting takes place. Next is item number 3, Devolution and Local Government Reorganization. Thank you, Ashad Mahmood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, first of all, can I welcome the new Councillor Andy Bell to the Pendle Council and for being a successful term. Mr. Mayor, as you will be aware that since the Minister of State, Jim McMahon, MP, wrote to all Lancashire Council leaders back in early February, work has been ongoing to see for all Lancashire authorities to put together a single response to the government, as requested in the February letter. Such a letter is also referred to as an interim plan, and submissions must be made to the government by 21st of March 2025. The draft letter contained in this report and the latest version in front of you is a combination of a number of meetings held by Lancashire leaders these last few weeks. It is the Executive's view, in my view, that Pendle Council should agree to sign this joint letter. The letter is the start of a process, not the end. It will give the government a sense of check on where various councils across England are with their thinking on this matter. Across England there will be joint letters with no preferences submitted. There will be joint letters where preferences are expressed. There will also be competing letters from within single county boundaries. I believe that by signing this letter, we will begin the process of determining the future of the people of Pendle, a brighter future, where the democratic process remains at a local level, where services are delivered in a more localised environment and in a more effective and efficient manner than they are today. It will be a resource-intensive process with the immediate task of reviewing our partnerships with our neighbouring councils to start the work of providing a bid submission to government by late November 2025. I also believe that in addition to the letter to the government, Pendle Council should also provide a covering letter that clearly states the preferred options we are willing to explore. Using the government's own current indicators and the chart on page 3 of this report, I would recommend that we state our preferences for exploring all the options 3, 4 and 5 at this stage, and that we do not believe that options 1 and 2 will provide the best and most effective local services and democracy to our communities. Should Council agree to this course of action, I will instruct the Chief Executive to formulate an appropriate covering letter that could be ratified as an emergency item at the Executive meeting on the evening of the 20th of March 2025, basically this Thursday coming. This will also give the Council some further days to analyse any responses to our proposals by other agencies. I hope and I can rely on the support of the Council to pave the way for Pendle, not only to play our part in this process, but to lead the debate where appropriate and for us to provide the best possible positive impact and opportunities for all our communities. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not quite sure whether I'm going to second what Councillor Mahmood has said there, because I didn't quite catch all of it. In particular, I didn't quite catch what he said about the covering letter and the options therein. So before I comment any further, could I just ask if that could be made explicit so that we can all hear?
Sure. Yes.
So you, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, I say, on page 3 of this report, options 1 and 2 are deleted, and options 3, 4 and 5, this stage, are explored. And with the cover letter, we can put our specific stamp on, if you will, our specific thinking to go with this main letter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under those circumstances, no, I'm not prepared to second this, and I give notice of an amendment once it has been moved and seconded and on the table.
Is there anyone to second? Asjad Mahmood.
I'll second it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Is he speaking? He has to speak now. Is he speaking?
You want to speak? Want to say something? Yes, Mr. Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move an amendment that we delete in the covering letter the support for a 3 unitary option in Lancashire. And I'll explain why. In December, this council voted for a resolution that rejected the creation of a monster authority based on Blackburn. The implication of a 3 unitary model would be that we would get just that, a Blackburn-based monster authority of 500,000 people or so. We voted for that in December as a council. We expressed in the resolution in December that our preference as a council was for a smaller unitary as possible, one that would be perhaps in the order of 3 district councils big, you get me drift. So that could be the Parliament's Birkendale, or Burton Rib, or Burton Ribdale, or something like that. But in all those combinations, we would not join with Blackburn, with Darwin. And I think, given that we voted for that in December, the 6-month rule applies, and that we are bound by the policy set in December. Now, there are ways and means around that, but on a technicality, I would say that what the Leader of the Council has proposed is out of order. But I hope there is a majority in this council chamber that would not vote for a unitary based on Blackburn. For the reasons that we set out in December, it is too big. it would be a denial of local democracy. It would be an authority dominated by people based far away from the residents of Pendle, unaware of their needs and incapable of making the sorts of decisions that residents of Pendle require. Mr. Mayor, in terms of the finances of such a large authority, inevitably any new unitaries are going to be dominated by the costs of social care. The problems of local government are really the problems of social care because they are unaffordable in the current financing regime and unsustainable with the setups that we've currently got. Now, reorganisation is not going to solve that problem. It's a fundamental underfunding of social care that is causing the issues that local government face. What will happen is that for all services, social care will become an increasingly greater black hole sucking in resources. Mr. Mayor, I hope that given that we're going to have an elected mayor, another tier of government up there in the stratosphere, we're going to have a combined authority, another pan-Lancashire body making decisions on people's behalf. It's incumbent on any new structure to reflect as best as possible the desires, the wishes, the needs, the demands of local residents. And only by having as small a unitary as possible can we hope to achieve such a body. I think the government has set out its stall. It's intending to drive this through. I don't necessarily regret the whole of that. I think that having two tiers of authorities is not good. You know my views about Lancashire County Council, but I do think if we're going to salvage the best that we can out of this reorganisation, that having that small unitary as possible is absolutely crucial. And the other element to this, which is equally as important, is bringing our parish and town councils along with us and having them having the power and the responsibility to fight for their communities in this new setup. If we don't do that, then we will truly lose any semblance of local democracy. So, without looking at the detail, because what the leader has put out is a sketch of what we would do, I think my amendment to rule out the three unitary authority is first and foremost there. It may be, as the debate develops, that we wish to put further amendments to refine what we are not prepared to accept and what we are prepared to accept. And I think the Council in December very definitely said we want a small unitary as possible, looking Burnley, Pendle, Rosendale, Ribble Valley. It may be, you know, one or the other or both, but that I think would be a good starting point for Pendle. For unitary councils in Lancashire, what does that mean? Not very sure. I'm not sure whether we could achieve that 3+ authority structure within a 4 unitary council format. But if we back the letter, which is anodyne to a large degree, if we say, yes, we'll sign the letter with everybody else, not to say everybody else is going to sign it, to be honest, but if we do that, the covering letter should set out Pendle's, the residents of Pendle's, desire and demand to have something as local as we can, to be relevant as we can, and 3 unitary councils in Lancashire is certainly not that. So I move this amendment in the hope and expectation that a majority of councillors here will back it.
Councillor Nadeem Ahmed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're not seconding.
I'll speak and then I'll
We need a second.
yeah, I'll second it. I will.
You are.
I want to speak first before I actually.
But you have to. It has to be
I'll
second.
second it. I'll second it. Yeah. Okay. I think it's a really difficult decision that we are being asked to make here this evening. It is a really complex issue. I think some members of the council have been involved in the process more than others. Some councils will have more knowledge and understanding of the process and what the implications will be going forward. And I've been thinking about it, like I'm sure you all have, in terms of what is best for Pendle. And I think that has to be our ultimate and only goal, is what is best for residents of Pendle. And I think we'll all agree that the smaller the new authority is, the better it is in terms of representation and delivering for our residents. And we've been here before in terms of other organisations where the government thinks bigger is better, but it isn't always the case. And I'm very sceptical in terms of the argument that's being made by government in terms of efficiency savings, and that we will be better in terms of delivering services for our residents. It may be the case. I think it's one of them things we don't know until it happens. But I don't believe that will be the case, and that's the reason I'm standing up to second the amendment. I'm not sure all my colleagues will agree with me, but that's my personal view. That I think that it will be in the best interests of our residents.
Thank you. Any more speakers? Councillor Ash Sutcliffe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I share a lot of the concerns that other councillors probably have in the room. We want to maintain our democracy and our closeness to that. And I think that one of our privileges here in Pendle is that we are quite heavily parished, and therefore we feel democracy quite closely in our town and parish councils. There is a concern that through local government reorganisation we lose some power, particularly the power to precept, to pay for things. Nelson Town Council like to precept for particular things, and they're very lucky that that can continue. Elsewhere in Lancashire, where they're not parish, then they would lose that ability according to what has been said by Angela Rayner et al. In her department. So I think that's a bit of a concern elsewhere. But here in Pendle, we're obviously more lucky that we've got that parish system. I think that to take options off the table at this point, personally, that's without the data, I think that could be, I don't want to say foolish, but maybe naive. I think that it's likely that if we come back with the data, we would probably say, yes, it's too big. We know, really, that these big institutions feel monster councils, they feel monolithic, they feel impenetrable through the democracy systems that we have, so it would be difficult to deal with. I think that, like all things, knowledge is power, and to have the knowledge about those things before we make a firm decision, obviously this is a preference rather than a decision, would be useful. So I think I'm still inclined to hear what other people have said. I think, or want to say, I hope that other people have got views on this. I think that Councillor Ahmed has said quite clearly there that removing that third option is, I think it was Councillor Wick that talked about Blackburn being a concern. Being lumped with Blackburn seems to be the concern that we quite often either on social media or through conversations with people. And I think I share those concerns. There are some great things going on in Blackburn, but there are some concerns around maybe financial issues. Different councils across Lancashire have different financial status, and being drawn into somewhere like Blackburn that has its own issues, and we're quite different to that, could be difficult. So I think I share those particular concerns. But if we're going to be drawing arbitrary lines on a map, there is no reason to say that Blackburn is included within that line of splitting the county into thirds. So if I was choosing where to draw the lines on the map, I think I too would draw around Blackburn, but it doesn't mean that I wouldn't necessarily divide into three. So I think it's important to have the data, the information, rather than just saying 3 is not a good idea and 4 is better at this stage, because we have to cost this, we have to look at how these systems can be divided, we have to look at, as the letter says, we have to look at transport, we have to look at the NHS, we have to look at those delivery areas for the NHS and the ICBs, all of the different people that are delivering services within Lancashire. I mean, if most of those come back and say, actually, the best way for the people of Pendle to have the best services is by dividing Lancashire into 3, then I wouldn't want to miss that opportunity. If they come back and say it's the best option is 4, then fine. But I don't want to lose the opportunity by removing things at this stage just for sake of preference. It's not to say that I want Blackburn to be lumped in with Blackburn, to use that colloquial term, but I just think that we need to be careful about nailing our colours to any particular mass at this stage. Thank you.
Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I think the reality is that no matter what we debate here tonight and going forward, Angela Rayner and the Labour government have made their, well, will be making their mind up, and will there be any attention to what Councillor Whip's amendment is or what the Leader has moved? The reality is they won't. So they will do what they want to do. I mean, in an ideal world, we'd all like a Pendle unitary, but the reality is that we won't get it because the finances aren't there to stack up, and basically we need to run it ourselves. Some would argue that we could, and maybe we could, but I think rather than that, take what the point that Councillor Sutcliffe is making, that, you know, rather than ruling things in and out at this stage, we need to keep all of our options open. But I think the important thing is that we have a consensus on the council moving forward, because there's no point for the council being split at this stage, because that will give an opportunity A, to the government, and B, to civil servants to divide and rule. What I would suggest to the Leader is, in the interest of unanimity, to withdraw his original motion. We support the amendment from Councillor Whip and submit that as a council. The Leader signed the letter that hopefully will be signed by the Leaders, but our company letter indicates our preference, and let's see what Angela Rayner does.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know whether I can get that part of my motion where I can withdraw option 3 and keep 4 and 5, or so happy to do that.
Councillor Whip.
Mr Mayor, if there are no further speakers, I'll just respond to the debate. Councillor Armour says not all councillors understand this. Well, I think most councillors do understand it because they represent local people, and this is what it's all about. It's having the strength to represent local people. It's having the power to be effective in doing so. And it's having the muscle to deliver. And I think, well, I mean, I look at the crest that we have in front of us, and it didn't seem so at the time, but I became a member of this council shortly after 9 authorities were brought together to form Pendle. And we've got the White Roses for the Yorkshire-based authorities and the Red Roses from the Lancashire-based authorities. And quite frankly, it is only within the last few years that the ultimate consequences of that unification have affected Pendle Council and its residents. We have seen over, and I personally seen over decades, that consolidation, that constriction, that concentration of power into the centre. And that is what we will see with any new unitary council. So part of my thinking, and I hope the strategy of the council, is to try and get Pendle at the centre of any new structure that we might end up landed with. and that's why I talked about, and the council has accepted, in the meeting in December, an authority that encompasses both Rosendale and Ribble Valley and keeps Pendle at the centre of such a body. So I think a lot of councillors do understand the issues. I'm very, very pleased that we've got Lawrence at the helm as Chief Executive with his knowledge and experience from what happened in Cumbria, the establishment of Westminster Referments, because I think we've got the best expert that we could ever have in terms of working through these next few months when, following the 21st of March, when the government starts to talk about what's actually going to happen, that we've got somebody who knows exactly how to go about getting the best for our residents here in Pendle. Councillor Sutcliffe says we have the benefit of being fully parished. And again, that's the work of 4 decades. We started parishing those unparished parts of Pendle back in the 1980s, you know, the 2020s now. So 4 decades of work, and it's only a couple of years ago that we completed that task when the parish of Bracewell and Brogden, which didn't have a parish council, was brought within the Barnoldswick township, and the whole of the residents of Pendle now have a town or parish council to look after their very local interests. Councillor Sutcliffe says taking options off the table is wrong. Well, no, I think we need to stake our claim. We need to say, as Pendle Council, we are not prepared to accept that, and this is what we would rather have instead. And I think both to Councillor Sutcliffe and Councillor Iqbal, that is a critical part of the discussions and negotiations that we're going to have in the coming weeks. And other councils will look to what we're doing, and perhaps other councils are doing, and say, oh yeah, okay, right, well that's what Pendle's doing, we'll fall in with that, or won't fall in with that. But yeah, be prepared to put our heads above the parapet and say, this is what we think. Not go down the route of following perhaps party political lines, although they're becoming very fractured if we look at what's happened in Ribble Valley today, aren't they? What on earth is Ribble Valley going to do with a leader of the council who's a member of Reform? I just pose the question. Councillor Iqbal says that...
Thank you, Mr. Whip.
I think if we don't say anything, they won't hear what we have to say, and if we do say something, they may just listen to us. So I'm grateful for the leader accepting this amendment. It may be that the discussion goes on, and there are other aspects of this that we really ought to explore further. I've been trying to work...
Thank you, Mr. Whip. Time's over.
Okay, I will sit down, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I'll come back with another amendment.
Thank you. Any more speakers? Huh? You want to move another amendment, Councillor Whip?
I think you need to dispose of this one, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I think that's the principal
Right.
motion, isn't it? I think... So,
There's
through
only
you,
one
mate.
on the table now.
Give us that.
There's only one.
Okay.
Yeah.
We need to vote on Councillor Whip's.
Yeah. So,
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, just basically, given that Councillor Azshad has accepted the premise of Councillor Whip, so I'm taking it that, in fact, what Councillor Whip has, between the two of them, it's that is a motion, not an amendment. So that motion can be amended from now.
Is it an amended motion?
Well, this is an interesting question, isn't it, Councillor Iqbal? Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to pick up on what the differences were between this version of the Pam Lancashire letter and this version of the Pam Lancashire letter, because I've been desperately trying to go through it as the meeting has progressed, and I haven't been able to work out the differences.
It might be helpful if the Chief Executive gives a bit
All
of...
right.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. And first of all, may I say a big thank you to you as members and the staff and community of Pendle for the great welcome that you've given me. And I'm really looking forward to serving its members, council and your community over the next few months. So thank you very much indeed for that honour. Going through the report, there are some changes. They aren't particularly substantive, but I will try and go through them as best I can. So looking at the letter itself, which is the Lancashire letter, and I'll start at the very beginning, where it starts, Dear Minister. There are very few changes, if any, going through the first 3 pages. Page 4, there are very few changes, if any, on that. We then get to page 5, where on the second paragraph on the challenges, there is a new sentence that begins with "we face a number of challenges." That's a new entry. Also on the 4th paragraph, you will see that there is a new entry. That is different from the ones that were originally put in. Some of these have been taken out, some of them have been reworded, but that one has gone. In terms of page 6 of the original, that has all changed and has become the third and fourth paragraphs of page 6 on the new version. The map on the original version of page 7 has now moved to the very back of the new letter please there. I'm very grateful to Councillor Sutcliffe for noticing that there is a sentence at the end of that new map which says rurality and issue of population density is starting to be added. We will make sure that that's removed. I think that's just erroneous from the previous iteration of this report, so thank you for highlighting that. We then go on to the clarification, and no other changes till we get to clarification. And then the first paragraph on the clarification on the new amended document is new. So that first paragraph there. On page 9, where it starts for clarity, which is the last paragraph with the bullet points, has been moved to page 8 of the new amended document. And you will see there for clarity with the bullet points. There's also a new bullet point on page 8 of the new document that starts with views on relative importance of each element. That is a new addition to the report. Just referring back to the original document on page 10, all of those items have now been moved to page 8. So those are the changes. The appendices have changed slightly because they've moved to the back of the document rather than where they are now. Some general issues of presentation. But I hope, Mr Mayor, that explains the changes that have been made. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Asjad Mahmood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just again, to pick up from Chief Exec, I think one of the key things that I pick up from the changes in the letters is the previous letter had more detailed information in there about declaration in different parts and things like that. As well as the new letter is a bit more generic, acknowledging the challenges that we're going to face, and it recognises and acknowledges declarations, say for example, it talks about Far Coast and obviously East Lancashire as a whole. And I think that's there just to get a consensus throughout Lancashire, rather than, you know, no doubt, I'm just going to say that Lancaster will have their own specific issues, Pendle has its own specific, likewise Blackburn and Burnley. And to get a full agreement, I think, you know, everyone wants to say, in that letter we want this, Burnley will want this, Blackburn will want this. So it's just trying to get that consensus at this stage, and that's why it's a bit more generic rather than more detailed and specific. That's the way. Do recognise and acknowledge all the declaration in general.
Councillor Whip.
I'm not sure if I can move an amendment to what has become my own proposal, Mr Mayor, but I'm going to attempt to, and if there is a procedural anomaly, I do apologise. But, Mr Mayor, I think our leaving to one side the generic Lancashire letter, which I think we would all accept if we wanted to start putting paragraphs in and taking things out, given that we have got another dozen plus authorities in the mix and they all wanted to do it. There's no way that anything's going to get done by the 21st of March. But I think our covering letter could well cover some fresh points that are important and we should be taking cognizance of. The first one, in the new version of the Lancashire letter, there is not much talk about the affordability of the process. And Mr Conway has come to Pendle, and one of the first things he said to people, he says, well, it's going to cost £1.5 million. Not £1.5 million, you know, to do the whole thing, but £1.5 million from getting from where we are now to the vesting date, which may be in 3 years' time. So we had our budget meeting not very long ago, and people may remember it because it went on into the early hours. I can see Councillor Tennant recoiling in horror. And one of the strands throughout that budget setting process was the fact that Pendle Council doesn't have very much money. We've been underfunded for a long time. There is no fair funding from government, and we struggle to afford the services that people in Pendle want. So Mr Conway comes and says we need £1.5 million in order to go through the process to get to a vesting date with the new unitary authority. My first question is, well, where's that £1.5 million? Because we have authority. But it's not only Pendle Council that will have to find £1.5 million, any other districts drawing up and appointing people, you know, shadow authorities, all that sort of stuff, will have to find that sort of money. The unitary authorities, the county council, will have to find a bigger lump still, depending on the complexity of how many options we're running with, whether it's, you know, we're running with 2 options perhaps, you know, those costs will multiply as well. So, Mr Mayor, my second amendment is that the covering letter needs to stress the unaffordability of unitarisation for the cash-strapped councils that there are, and it's not only Pendle that's cash-strapped. Lancashire County Council will be as cash-strapped as any, perhaps more so than others, and that we need to be saying to government, if you want us to do a good job of creating new authorities, you have got to get your hand in the pocket. You haven't fair funded us for the services we're providing. We want to carry on providing those services. We don't want to be robbing services in order to pay for the process of creating the unitary authorities. And if I may, Mr Mayor, combine that with another point, which is about town and parishes. Councillor Sutcliffe referred to the benefit that being fully parished has within this discussion and debate. Not all district councils in Lancashire are fully parished, and there is a peril in that some areas will not be able to pass over services and facilities to a very local council that would perhaps be best placed to operate those services and facilities in future. And the other thing that I think we need to put in the covering letter is a very strong paragraph highlighting the desirability of areas being fully parished and asking if governance reviews can be carried out as a matter of urgency in order to get those areas not yet parished in future. And that would mean getting town councils established for those quite large communities that don't currently have a very local council. So it's an amendment to include within the covering letter the request for government to fund the process rather than robbing our services in order to pay for it, and secondly to highlight the importance of town and parish councils and a request that government facilitates the governance reviews that will enable them to be set up in the areas that aren't currently parished.
Councillor Nadeem Ahmed.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Happy to second that. I think Councillor Wick raises a couple of important points there. In terms of, firstly, the reorganisation, I think it's going to be a massive task, and it's going to be a huge burden on our limited resources to deal with all the process and the changes that are required in a relatively short period of time. Secondly, in terms of the parishes, again, I think it's a really good point because Pendle we fully parished. There's other councils which may be partly parished or not parished at all, I'm not sure. So residents in Pendle would be paying extra in terms of council tax for their parishes, and if other boroughs or other areas are not parished, that their residents wouldn't be faced with that extra council tax bill from the parishes. So I think two really important points. I think, yeah, they need to be highlighted in the letter. Happy to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Arshid Mahmood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to accept that. I think that's a good point made, especially with the parish and town councils. Talking to some of the other leaders and some of the other colleagues throughout the country, I think they're in a very strong position. I think we've got a huge advantage, a head start by having the parish and town councils. And I think some of the other areas up and down the country are now having to, not panic is probably not the right word, but it's kind of an area that's exploring as fast as possible where they want to be parished. So happy to support.
Thank you.
Any more speakers?
Any more speakers?
Not to respond.
No.
Vote on the amendment.
Could we vote on the amendment? All those in favour?
Right. That's a substantive motion. Any more amendments?
Any more amendments? No.
Vote on the substantive motion.
Can we go for the vote again? All those in favour? That's it. Thank you, everyone. So, and have a pleasant night. So.
Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, please do stand for the worship and